The night sky fractured as a rift tore across the heavens, spilling a pulse of pale light that rippled through orbiting stations. The narrator explained that the anomaly grew wider, as if the stars themselves were screaming. Ethan Hayes said, "Hold the sensors steady, that's no natural storm." His voice carried fear, though his posture stayed rigid. Lila Morgan whispered, "It's impossible. The ship was destroyed 20 years ago." The glowing silhouette of a massive vessel emerged, its hull scarred yet whole, its ghostly frame shimmering like a memory brought to life. Panic swept through the control room, alarms blaring in red strobes. Ethan Hayes muttered, "The phantom is real, and it's come back." The silence between beats of terror stretched into eternity, as the crew realized this was no trick of space. The ghost ship had returned from the dead, and its presence carried the weight of unfinished nightmares. The station fell into stunned silence, broken only by the hum of failing machinery. Ethan Hayes said, "That ship should be nothing but fragments." His words clashed against the hologram, showing the vessel in terrifying detail. Lila Morgan clenched her fists, whispering, "If this is real, then history lied to us." Outside the window, the ghost ship floated with a predatory stillness, a monument to forgotten horrors. The crew hesitated, fear dripping from every shallow breath. Lights flickered, as though the station itself feared what loomed before them. Ethan Hayes barked, "Lock down every system. Prepare for contact." But unease lingered in the silence, because no one truly knew what they were preparing for. The impossible had returned, and with it came the weight of 20 years of buried truths. Whispers spread through the crew like infection, some praying, others cursing. A young technician muttered, "It's cursed." It dragged them all into darkness once. Lila Morgan replied sharply, "This is no curse, it's science we failed to understand." Ethan Hayes glared at her, saying, "Science won't save us if it comes for us again." The ghost ship drifted closer, its sheer presence pressing against the station walls. Instruments beeped erratically, static crawling through the intercom. The commander's face hardened, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. The silence outside felt alive, as though the void itself held its breath. Each crew member knew history was repeating, but this time they were unwilling witnesses to the rebirth of terror. Alarms echoed again as the ghost ship broadcast a pulse. Monitors flared, data streams corrupted, and the crew shielded their eyes. Lila Morgan gasped, "It's sending signals encrypted in frequencies we've never seen." Ethan Hayes growled, "Shut it down before it reaches our systems." The station shuddered violently, metal groaning under invisible pressure. Sparks rained from consoles, casting sharp shadows across the panic. Fear tightened every chest as the lights dimmed, leaving only the eerie glow of the ship outside. Ethan Hayes steadied himself, voice trembling yet commanding, "We're not ready for this." His words fell flat against the chaos, leaving only the hum of alien interference and the weight of something far more powerful than they had ever faced. Silence fell once more, the hum of interference fading as quickly as it arrived. The ghost ship drifted back into stillness, as though mocking them. Ethan Hayes whispered, "It's alive, testing us." Lila Morgan shook her head, voice sharp, "Not alive. It's something worse." Crew exchanged fearful glances, each mind haunted by rumors of the vessel's cursed past. Ethan Hayes stood taller, forcing authority into his tone. "We'll send a probe. We need answers before fear kills us." Lila Morgan's eyes glistened with dread as she murmured, "Answers have already killed too many." The ship outside glowed faintly, silent but watching, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The atmosphere grew heavy, each breath harder to take, as Act 1 closed with dread rooted deep in every soul aboard. The narrator revealed the hum of the station softened, yet the tension thickened in every chest. Ethan Hayes sat heavily at his command chair, the weight of leadership pressing on his scarred face. He whispered, "I promised myself I'd never face this ghost again." Lila Morgan leaned against a console, her sharp eyes locked on him. She said, You lost comrades when it vanished, didn't you? His silence answered. Crew members exchanged wary glances, realizing their commander's fear was deeper than protocol. The ghost ship loomed through the window, its scarred hull glowing like a wound refusing to close. Lila Morgan's voice softened. Ethan, if this is truly back, maybe it returned for us. His jaw tightened as he replied, then we'll make sure it regrets choosing us. But doubt lingered in his eyes, etched into the silence of the command deck. The narrator described how Ethan Hayes stood and paced, his boots echoing like a heartbeat in the silent deck. He said, I led men into that anomaly once, and not one returned. Lila Morgan watched him closely, her voice low. That scar you carry is not only on your cheek. He froze, her words striking deeper than she intended. Crew members looked away, not daring to intrude on the commander's pain. The ghost ship hovered, glowing against the black canvas of space like a predator waiting. Hayes clenched his fists, whispering to himself, I will not bury more lives in its shadow. Morgan stepped closer, her tone soft but firm. Then face it with me. I've spent my life studying lies about this ship. We can uncover the truth together. Their eyes met, fear entwined with reluctant trust. The narrator explained how Lila Morgan guided Ethan Hayes to a dim side chamber, filled with archives and old star maps. She said, I studied every record of the Phantom's disappearance. What we saw should not exist. Ethan's eyes scanned the glowing maps, memories of dead friends rising. He muttered, we were told it was swallowed by dark matter. She leaned closer, whispering, that was the story they fed you. The truth is buried under lies, and now it floats before us. He turned sharply, his scar catching the dim light, anger burning. So we've been pawns in a history written by cowards. Lila placed a hand on his arm, her expression softer. Not cowards, Ethan. Survivors who wanted to bury what they could not fight. The chamber fell silent as both realized survival might not be possible this time. The narrator described how the crew gathered in the briefing hall, tension thick as steel. Ethan Hayes stood at the front, shoulders squared but eyes heavy. He declared, this is not a myth. The Phantom is real, and it has returned. A murmur spread, fear crawling through the room. Lila Morgan stepped beside him, her voice clear. We have studied fragments and rumors, but none of it prepared us for this. You must understand, it is not only a ship but a message. Ethan nodded slowly, his voice sharp, and if that message is war, then we must decide if we fight or flee. Silence fell as crew members exchanged desperate looks. One young officer muttered, what if it wants us alive? The question pierced every heart, leaving no certainty in its echo. The narrator explained how, after the briefing, Ethan Hayes lingered alone in the observation deck. The ghost ship drifted outside, framed in stars, as though waiting for him. He muttered, I can feel it watching. Lila Morgan entered quietly, standing beside him. She said, it's more than a ship, Ethan. It's a mirror. Whatever destroyed it before has tied itself to us. His eyes remained fixed on the glowing hull. He whispered, I thought I had buried this nightmare, but it followed me into command. Lila placed her hand against the glass, voice trembling. Then let's face it together, even if it kills us. Ethan finally turned to her, scar illuminated by the ghostly glow, and for the first time he allowed his fear to show, silent but undeniable. The narrator revealed how the command deck filled with dread as the ghost ship pulsed again, releasing waves that rattled the station's core. Ethan Hayes gripped the rail, muttering, it's probing us. Lila Morgan's eyes narrowed, not probing, searching. Crew members flinched as lights flickered, consoles sparking with unreadable code. A young officer cried out, systems are rewriting themselves. Ethan barked, shut them down, now. Morgan stepped forward, voice sharp, no, if we cut it, we lose the chance to learn what it wants. Ethan glared at her, his scar catching the strobe light. He growled, and if it wants us dead? Silence followed, broken only by the hum of alien interference. For the first time, the crew realized they might not be facing a ship, but something alive, vast and intelligent. The narrator explained how tension deepened as a holographic signal flickered to life in the center of the deck. Alien glyphs spiraled across the air like fireflies. Lila Morgan whispered, "It's communication." Ethan Hayes scowled, "No, it's invasion." Crew members leaned back, faces bathed in ghostly light. A technician muttered, "It's rewriting our language banks." Panic spread like fire, whispers turning to shouts. Ethan slammed his fist against the console, commanding silence. He said, "If it speaks, we don't answer." But Morgan stepped closer to the glowing glyphs, her face illuminated, eyes wide with awe. "Ethan," she whispered, "it already knows we're listening." A chilling stillness filled the deck as the alien language shaped itself into something almost human, and every crew member froze. The narrator revealed how the ghostly glyphs twisted, reshaping into fractured human words. A voice echoed, hollow and distorted. "Return what was taken." Crew gasped, fear clutching throats. Ethan Hayes spat, "This is a trap." Lila Morgan whispered, "It remembers." He snapped at her, "What do you know that you're not telling us?" Her silence was heavy, her eyes shadowed with guilt. Crew members exchanged uneasy looks, suspicion spreading through the ranks. A young officer muttered, "She knew this would happen." Ethan's anger flared, scar burning red in the pulsing light. He said, "Morgan, if you're keeping secrets, now is the time to speak." She looked at him with trembling resolve, whispering, "It's not a ship, it's a grave, and we stole from it." The silence that followed was unbearable. The narrator described how Ethan Hayes slammed both hands on the console, his voice breaking. "What did we take, Morgan?" She whispered, "A fragment, a core. The government buried it, called it debris." But it wasn't. Crew erupted in angry shouts, panic echoing against metal walls. A technician cried, "You doomed us all." Ethan roared, silencing them. "Enough." His eyes burned into Morgan, betrayal cutting deep. She raised her hands defensively, whispering, "I tried to warn them, Ethan. No one listened." The ghost ship outside pulsed brighter, its glow spreading across the deck like a warning. Ethan's fists trembled against the console, caught between fury and despair. The narrator emphasized that the crew no longer feared only the ship. They now feared what secrets lay within their own ranks. The narrator revealed that silence fell heavy after the outburst, the crew staring at Lila Morgan with distrust. Ethan Hayes finally said, "So we stole from the dead, and now the dead have come for us." Morgan's voice cracked. It wasn't theft, it was survival. The fragment powered our fleets for decades. Ethan's gaze hardened, scar glinting under alien glow. "Then we built our future on graves," he muttered. Crew members looked shaken, some whispering prayers, others backing away as though the ship outside could hear. Morgan's shoulders sagged under the weight of her confession. Ethan turned to the window, voice heavy with dread. "It doesn't want us, it wants what we took. But to give it back may cost every soul aboard." The ghost ship pulsed again, casting shadows like a heartbeat across the deck. The narrator revealed how the ghost ship's glow intensified, bathing the control deck in a sickly blue. Ethan Hayes narrowed his eyes, muttering, "It's not just demanding, it's remembering." Lila Morgan stepped closer to the projection, whispering, "This isn't war, Ethan. It's grief." Crew members shifted uneasily, their reflections trembling on the glass. The alien voice returned, distorted yet clearer. "Return. What was stolen, or be consumed." Ethan clenched his fists, scar illuminated in harsh light. He said, "We built our power from its corpse." Morgan's voice cracked, "And now it's come to reclaim its dead." Silence stretched across the deck as realization dawned. This was not a battlefront. It was a graveyard demanding its bones be restored. The narrator described how Lila Morgan accessed hidden archives, her hands trembling as files unlocked. She confessed, "The government knew. The Phantom was never destroyed. It was dissected." Ethan Hayes slammed the table, his voice shaking, "And you were part of it." Crew members gasped, whispers rising like wildfire. Morgan's eyes glistened, guilt raw. "I was a researcher, forced into silence." They buried the truth, but the ship never forgot. Ethan's jaw tightened, voice sharp as steel. "You lied to your crew. You lied to me." Her voice trembled. "I lied to survive." The ghost ship pulsed outside, its silent judgment pressing down like a curse. The narrator emphasized how betrayal was no longer a whisper, but a wound splitting them apart. The narrator explained how the alien voice grew louder, its tone almost sorrowful. Words formed. "Children of thieves, return the heart." Ethan Hayes whispered, "The fragment." Lila Morgan nodded with dread. It was no fragment. It was its core, its life. Crew members recoiled in horror, whispers turning into prayers. Hayes' voice cracked. "We stole its soul to fuel our fleets." Morgan's hands shook as she whispered, "And now it wants itself whole again." The ghost ship's glow intensified, casting long shadows that quivered with unnatural rhythm. The crew realized they were not just facing a ship. They were standing before a grieving titan demanding restitution. The narrator revealed how chaos erupted among the crew. One officer shouted, "We can't return it. Our fleets will collapse." Another cried, "We'll all die if we don't." Ethan Hayes roared, silencing them. "Enough. Fear won't decide this." Lila Morgan stepped forward, her voice breaking. "Ethan, this ship is not just a machine, it's alive. Returning the core is the only way to end this." Ethan glared at her, torn between duty and survival. His scar caught the flickering light, a reminder of past failure. Crew members stared at him with pleading eyes, desperate for a decision. The narrator described how leadership had never felt heavier on his shoulders. The narrator explained how Ethan Hayes stood before the massive window, his reflection merging with the ghost ship outside. He whispered, "If we return the core, we lose everything we built." Lila Morgan stood beside him, her voice quiet. "If we don't, we lose more than fleets. We lose ourselves." Crew members stood behind them, eyes fixed on their commander, every breath held in suspense. Ethan's jaw trembled, scar shadowed by pale glow. He finally muttered, "Prepare the core for release." A gasp filled the deck, disbelief echoing down. Morgan's hand touched the glass softly, whispering, "Maybe this will finally let them rest." Outside, the ghost ship pulsed brighter, as if answering their choice. The narrator revealed how the core chamber doors slid open with a groan, revealing the fragment sealed within glass. Its glow was alive, pulsing like a beating heart. Ethan Hayes whispered, "This is what we built empires on." Lila Morgan stepped closer, her face pale. "It was never ours." Crew members stared in fearful silence, their reflections trembling against the chamber walls. The alien voice echoed through the hull, "Return, or perish." Hayes gritted his teeth, scar glinting under the blue glow. "If we release it, we cripple humanity." Morgan's voice cut through the silence. "If we keep it, we end humanity." The choice became a blade pressing against all their throats, one that demanded blood. The narrator described how Ethan Hayes reached toward the glass, his hand trembling. He whispered, "I lost my men once. I won't sacrifice another crew to pride." Lila Morgan watched him, her voice sharp, then choose survival with honor. Crew members leaned forward, breaths shallow, eyes wide with desperation. Sparks flickered from overhead panels as the ship's presence pressed heavier against the station. Hayes' scar glowed under shifting light, a reminder of battles long past. He clenched his fist, growling, "Prepare for release." A murmur swept the chamber, part relief, part despair. Morgan's eyes glistened as she whispered, "Then history may forgive us." The ghost ship outside pulsed violently, as if its lifeline called home. The narrator explained how alarms blared as systems rerouted. The core chamber hissed, steam rising as locks disengaged. Ethan Hayes shouted, "Steady!" His voice cracked with tension. Crew members staggered, some gripping rails, others muttering prayers. Lila Morgan whispered, "It feels alive." The core pulsed brighter, shaking walls with rhythmic beats. Hayes' eyes burned with resolve, though sweat slid across his scar. He muttered, "If this kills us, let it be my burden." Morgan's hand brushed his arm softly, her voice trembling. "No, this is our burden." Together they stood before the chamber, guardians of the stolen soul, as the ghost ship's energy roared against the hull. The narrator described how the core lifted slowly, rising within its containment field, blue light flooding every shadow. The alien voice thundered, "The heart returns." Crew members shielded their eyes, some crying, others kneeling. Ethan Hayes stood tall, his voice breaking. "If this ends us, then let it end with courage." Lila Morgan's eyes filled with tears, whispering, "For the first time, we are not thieves." The ghost ship outside shook space itself, its vast form vibrating, as if awakening. Hayes and Morgan stood side by side, both silhouettes etched in the blinding glow. In that moment, death felt certain, but so did redemption. The narrator revealed how the containment shattered, releasing the core as a sphere of light that drifted through the air. Ethan Hayes whispered, "It's going home." Lila Morgan pressed her hand to the glass, whispering, "Then let it." Crew members gasped as the core phased through the wall, drawn toward the ghost ship. Outside, the vessel pulsed in response, its scars glowing, hull shifting as if flesh knitting over wounds. Hayes' voice trembled, "It's alive again." Morgan's tears fell as she whispered, "And it remembers mercy." The crew stood silent, every breath heavy, as the impossible unfolded before their eyes. The dead were rising, not in vengeance, but in rebirth. The narrator revealed how the ghost ship pulsed once more, no longer fractured but whole, its glow spreading like dawn across the void. Ethan Hayes whispered, "It's alive again." Lila Morgan stood beside him, voice soft, "And we are still here." Crew members exhaled shaky breaths, relief mixing with dread. Outside, the vessel's scars sealed, metal knitting like flesh reborn. Hayes' scar caught the light as he muttered, "We returned its heart, but what did it take from ours?" Morgan lowered her gaze, replying, "Hope, and maybe the future." Silence settled over the deck, heavy and uncertain. The ghost ship drifted slowly, as if testing its rebirth, and the crew realized they had given away more than power. They had given away their security. The narrator described how a young officer whispered, "What happens now?" No one answered. Ethan Hayes turned slowly, his scarred face weary. He said, "We've crippled our fleets, but saved our souls." Lila Morgan's eyes narrowed. "Souls don't power ships, Ethan." Crew members shifted uneasily, some whispering about rebellion, others praying. Hayes raised his hand, silencing them. "We've stolen enough from the dead. Now we live with what remains." Morgan whispered bitterly, "And what remains may not be enough." The ghost ship pulsed again, drifting further into the void, leaving behind both awe and an emptiness deeper than space. The narrator explained how Ethan Hayes walked alone into the dim archive chamber, ghostly light from maps dancing on his scarred face. He whispered, "Men died for that core. I buried them with lies." Lila Morgan entered quietly, her voice trembling, "And I lived with the lies I told to keep it hidden." Hayes turned, his eyes burning. "We built our world on their grave." Morgan stepped closer, her face haunted, "But maybe this sacrifice is our chance to build differently." Silence lingered between them, not of anger, but of exhausted truth. Both realized they had survived, but survival was not victory. It was only debt repaid in part. The narrator described how the crew gathered at the observation deck one last time. The ghost ship drifted slowly, its light fading to a soft ember in the dark. A technician murmured, "It's leaving." Ethan Hayes said firmly, "Let it. Its war with us is finished." Lila Morgan whispered, "Or just beginning elsewhere." Crew members stood silent, faces pressed with awe and fear. Hayes exhaled, his scar pale under starlight. "We cannot undo what we built, but we can choose what we build next." Morgan lowered her eyes, whispering, "If humanity survives, what comes after this?" The ship's glow dwindled into the void, a fading reminder of both mercy and judgment. The narrator revealed how the station fell quiet after the ghost ship vanished. Ethan Hayes whispered, "We gave back what was never ours." His voice carried both relief and despair. Lila Morgan said softly, "But we cannot give back the years it powered us." Crew members bowed their heads, mourning not only the dead but the future stripped away. Hayes' scarred face softened as he turned to Morgan, whispering, "Then we carry this weight, not as thieves, but as witnesses." She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. The narrator closed the moment with silence, the kind that marked endings, but also the fragile beginning of something new. The narrator revealed how the station drifted in silence, its hull battered but alive. Ethan Hayes stood at the window, scar glinting faintly under starlight. He whispered, "We lived but not unchanged." Lila Morgan walked to his side, her eyes hollow. Survival is not victory. Crew members moved quietly behind them, their movements slow, drained. The ghost ship was gone, yet its absence felt heavier than its presence. Hayes lowered his gaze, murmuring, "Every star reminds me of what we gave away." Morgan's lips trembled as she whispered, "And what we cannot reclaim." The silence pressed tighter, heavier than the void itself. The narrator described how a young technician approached his voice breaking, "Commander, what do we tell them back home?" Ethan Hayes closed his eyes, the scar pulling as he answered, "We tell them the truth." Crew members froze, the weight of those words sinking deep. Lila Morgan turned toward him, whispering, "Truth is not what they want." Hayes replied firmly, "Truth is all we have left." Silence gripped the chamber. For years they had lived under lies, but the cost of survival had shattered illusions. Morgan lowered her head, her voice faint, "Then history will damn us." Hayes exhaled, "Or remember us." The line carved itself into every heart. The narrator explained how the archive chamber flickered with failing lights, its maps fractured. Lila Morgan stood alone, hands trembling as she whispered, "We were never meant to win." Ethan Hayes entered quietly, his scar half hidden in shadow. "War was never ours to fight," he muttered. Morgan's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. "Then why were we chosen?" Hayes placed a hand on her shoulder, his tone quiet but firm. "Not chosen, cursed." Crew members passed outside the doorway, their faces drawn and tired, carrying the weight of the dead. The chamber dimmed into near darkness, as though history itself was sealing the memory away. The narrator revealed how the crew gathered one last time at the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to all that transpired. Ethan Hayes faced them, voice steady, "We carry scars, but we carry truth." Crew members looked to him, their weary eyes flickering with fragments of hope. Lila Morgan stood slightly apart, whispering to herself, "Truth cannot heal the dead." Yet, she did not walk away. Hayes raised his head, scar catching pale light, and said, "What we lost cannot return, but what remains is ours to protect." The words carried across the deck, fragile but firm, binding survivors in shared resolve. The narrator concluded as Ethan Hayes remained at the window, his reflection merging with infinite stars. He whispered, "The war was never ours to win." Lila Morgan stood behind him, her face pale, whispering, "But it was ours to survive." Crew members faded into silence, their shadows blending into the dim deck. The stars outside shimmered coldly, distant and indifferent. The ghost ship's memory lingered in every breath, an echo of mercy and judgment. Hayes pressed his scarred hand against the glass, his voice quiet but unshakable. "We survived the dead. Now we live for the living." The deck fell silent as the universe swallowed their words, leaving only awe and dread.